Have you ever come across a painting that feels as though it was never meant to be found? One that seems to exist outside the history books, hidden from museums, and almost erased from public memory. That was exactly my reaction the first time I saw this artwork. It wasn't simply unusual, it was deeply unsettling. The longer I looked at it, the more questions it raised. Why had I never heard of it? Why wasn't it hanging in a famous gallery alongside other masterpieces from its era? The answer surprised me. This mysterious work isn't part of any permanent museum collection. Instead, it remains tucked away in private hands, appearing only on rare occasions before disappearing once again. Discovering it feels less like studying art history and more like uncovering a forgotten secret. But the painting itself isn't the only mystery. The artist behind it was barely an adult. Léon Spiliert was just 18 years old when he created Fawn by Moonlight in 1900. Despite his youth, his imagination seemed decades ahead of its time. Haunted by chronic insomnia, fascinated by the writings of Edgar Allan Poe and Friedrich Nietzsche, Spiliert filled his work with lonely landscapes, eerie figures, and dreamlike visions that reflected the darkness of his own thoughts. That raises the question everyone asks when they first see this painting. What are we really looking at? Is this simply a scene from ancient mythology, a harmless fantasy brought to life under the moon? Or is it something much more personal, a glimpse into the troubled mind of a young artist struggling with fear, obsession, and isolation? Before exploring those possibilities, let's first understand the painting itself. Fawn by Moonlight was created in 1900 when Spiliert was only 18 or 19 years old. Unlike many celebrated masterpieces of the period, this isn't a huge oil painting displayed across a grand museum wall. It's surprisingly modest in both material and size. Instead of thick layers of oil paint, Spiliert worked with diluted India ink, black crayon, and colored pencils on paper. The result sits somewhere between a drawing and a painting. The delicate materials give the work a fragile, almost ghostly quality, perfectly matching its mysterious atmosphere. Its dimensions are equally modest, roughly 49 by 63 centimeters. Small enough to fit comfortably on a desk, yet within that limited space Spiliert creates an entire world that feels strangely alive. Ironically, very few people have ever experienced the original artwork. Because it belongs to a private collection, it's rarely available to the public. It has appeared in major exhibitions, including the Royal Academy in London and later the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. But once those exhibitions ended, the painting vanished from public view again. Perhaps that rarity only adds to its fascination. Now look closely at the composition. At the center stands a fawn, a mythical creature with the body of a man and the legs of a goat. He plays a set of pipes while a group of goats quietly follows behind him. There is no movement, no excitement, only an eerie silence, as though the animals have fallen under a strange spell. Above them hangs an enormous full moon, flooding the landscape with pale, icy light. Your eyes naturally travel from the glowing moon down to the musician before disappearing into the dark silhouettes gathered beneath him. Everything feels carefully arranged. Spiliert limits himself almost entirely to black, white, and shades of gray. Bright colors are almost completely absent. This restrained palette transforms the landscape into something that feels less like reality and more like a memory, or perhaps a dream. The contrast between darkness and moonlight is so dramatic that the image resembles an old photographic negative, where familiar forms suddenly become unsettling simply because the light has been reversed. Nothing appears violent. Nothing appears threatening. Yet almost every viewer senses that something is deeply wrong. To understand why, we need to leave the painting behind for a moment and travel back to Europe at the dawn of the 20th century. The year is 1900. Society is changing at an astonishing pace. Scientific discoveries are transforming everyday life, cities are expanding rapidly, and technology promises an exciting future. Yet beneath that optimism lies another movement, one fascinated not with machines, but with dreams, myths, symbols, and the hidden corners of the human mind. This was the age of symbolism. Unlike the Impressionists who painted sunlight and ordinary life, symbolist artists turned inward. They believed art should reveal emotions, fears, spiritual ideas, and invisible truths rather than simply recording what the eye could see. Léon Spiliert embraced that philosophy completely. His paintings rarely celebrate the outside world. Instead, they invite us into silent spaces filled with uncertainty, loneliness, and imagination. The cultural atmosphere around him encouraged exactly that kind of thinking. Only a short time earlier, Sigmund Freud had introduced revolutionary ideas about dreams and the unconscious, suggesting that our sleeping minds could reveal hidden desires and fears. In music, Claude Debussy captivated audiences with Prélude à l'après-midi d'un faun, inspired by Stéphane Mallarmé's famous poem about a faun drifting between dream and reality. Meanwhile, the haunting stories of Edgar Allan Poe and the radical philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche challenged readers to question morality, identity, and the darker sides of human nature. Spiliert absorbed all of these influences. His Faun by Moonlight isn't simply another mythological scene. It reflects an era captivated by mystery and psychological exploration. Yet unlike many artists who portrayed fauns as joyful, seductive, or playful creatures, Spiliert places his beneath a cold moon, surrounded by silent goats that resemble shadows more than living animals. The result isn't comforting. It's haunting. And that haunting atmosphere is where the painting's greatest mystery truly begins. So what exactly does the faun represent? At first glance, the answer seems straightforward. In Roman mythology, fauns were spirits of forests and fields, closely connected to nature, fertility, and untamed freedom. Their Greek counterparts, the satyrs, followed Dionysus, the god of wine and celebration. Half man and half goat, they were famous for playing the pan flute, dancing through woodlands, and embracing life's pleasures without restraint. For centuries, artists portrayed these creatures as playful, seductive, and full of energy. But there was always another side to their legend. Because the faun was part human and part beast, it also represented humanity's darker instincts, the desires, temptations, and impulses that civilization tries to suppress. It was a symbol of freedom, but also of chaos. That dual nature is exactly what makes Spiliert's painting so fascinating. One interpretation is surprisingly peaceful. Perhaps this is simply a mythological scene. A lonely faun wanders beneath the moon, filling the night with music while a small herd of goats follows quietly behind him. The silence, the moonlight, and the empty landscape create a dreamlike moment suspended outside time. Seen this way, the painting becomes almost poetic. But another reading tells a much darker story. Throughout Christian history, goats gradually acquired a very different meaning. Rather than symbolizing nature, they became associated with temptation, sin, witchcraft, and even the devil himself. Medieval artists often linked goats to scenes of the witches' Sabbath, where strange rituals were believed to take place beneath the cover of darkness. Viewed through that lens, everything changes. The moon no longer feels peaceful. The goats no longer seem harmless. Even the faun's music begins to resemble a ritual rather than a melody. Instead of leading animals through the countryside, he appears to be guiding them into something mysterious, perhaps even forbidden. And then there is a third interpretation. Many art historians believe the painting may not be about mythology at all. They see the faun as Leon Spiliert himself. When he painted Faun by Moonlight, he was still a teenager, but his life was far from ordinary. He struggled with chronic illness that caused constant pain and severe insomnia. While most people slept, Spiliert spent long nights awake, sketching by lamplight as silence filled the streets outside. Those endless nights shaped the way he saw the world. Darkness became familiar. Loneliness became a companion. The boundary between dreams and reality slowly began to blur. His imagination was equally intense. He devoured the works of Edgar Allan Poe, whose stories explored madness, fear, and the hidden corners of the human mind. He admired Friedrich Nietzsche, copying the philosopher's portraits and filling notebooks with his ideas about individuality and human nature. These influences didn't simply inspire Spiliert. They became part of him. When you know this, Faun by Moonlight begins to feel less like an illustration of mythology and more like a psychological self-portrait. The solitary faun could represent the young artist himself. The flute becomes a symbol of artistic creation. And the silent goats. Perhaps they are not animals at all, but the fears, anxieties, and restless thoughts that followed him through countless sleepless nights. Art, in this interpretation, becomes the only language capable of calming those inner demons. What's remarkable is that Spiliert never explained the painting. Unlike many artists who left diaries or detailed letters discussing their intentions, he remained silent. He never revealed whether the scene represented mythology, symbolism, autobiography, or something entirely different. That silence may be the painting's greatest strength. Without a definitive explanation, every viewer is invited to complete the story themselves. Some see beauty, others see fear. Some recognize a forgotten myth brought back to life. Others see the portrait of a lonely young man searching for meaning beneath an empty night sky. More than a century has passed since Faun by Moonlight was created, yet it continues to resist simple answers. Perhaps that is why it still feels so modern. Long before psychology became a common subject in art, Spiliert was already exploring isolation, subconscious fears, and emotional uncertainty. His work anticipated many of the themes that would later define Expressionism and Surrealism, proving that some artists are understood only long after their own time. That is the strange power of this painting. The longer you study it, the less certain you become. Every shadow suggests another possibility. Every glance reveals another question. And maybe that's exactly what Spiliert wanted, not to provide answers, but to leave us wandering through the same mysterious landscape that existed inside his own mind. So now I'd like to hear your opinion. When you look at Faun by Moonlight, what do you see? A peaceful mythological scene, a hidden pagan ritual, or the silent confession of a young artist wrestling with his own darkness? Let me know your interpretation in the comments below. If you enjoyed uncovering the mystery behind this forgotten masterpiece, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next journey into the hidden stories of art. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.